My stepmother treated me like a burden after my dad died. Now she expects me to rescue her from homelessness. I was 28 when my past came knocking again, uninvited and unwelcome. For the last decade, I had lived in the southern city of Wellington, slowly building a life for myself in digital marketing. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I had a quiet apartment, a decent income, and, more importantly, peace. That peace was hard-earned, the kind that comes only after escaping a home that never truly felt like one. Growing up, my life changed forever at the age of 6, when my mother passed away. My father remarried 2 years later. At first, the woman he brought into our lives seemed kind, or at least she played the part. She wasn't overtly cruel, just cold in that subtle way that made you feel like an unwelcome guest in your own house. When my father died suddenly from a heart condition just before I turned 16, everything about our dynamic changed. It was as though any remaining pretense dropped the moment we buried him. No longer the wife of a husband with a child, she began treating me like a burden, a problem to be solved. Within a week of the funeral, she told me I needed to start contributing financially to stay in the house. It was jarring, to be grieving one moment and calculating rent the next. At first I thought I had misunderstood, but her tone was businesslike, not cruel, just detached. So I did what I had to do. I got a job at a local cafe after school, then another on weekends helping a landscaping crew. I barely slept, barely studied, and barely survived. Every month, whatever money I made was handed over to her. There was no acknowledgement, no appreciation, just expectation. As long as the money came in, she barely noticed whether I was okay. My weekends were swallowed by exhaustion, and my dreams of university faded into background noise I could no longer afford to chase. The moment I turned 18, I packed a duffel bag and walked out. My destination was a shared flat in the industrial outskirts of Wellington, cramped, dusty, and noisy. But mine. No one asked me for rent before I could afford it. No one looked at me like I was in the way. I finally had some breathing room, and I was determined never to go back. Over the years, I climbed slowly up the career ladder. There were moments I scraped by, unsure if I'd make rent or keep the lights on. I ate instant noodles for weeks at a time and skipped holidays because I couldn't afford to take time off. But step by step, I built a modest but stable life. I didn't think much about my past. I didn't let myself. That part of my life felt like a closed book, until it wasn't. One evening I was making dinner when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before picking up. The voice on the other end was hauntingly familiar. It was her. Her voice wavered with a fake sort of vulnerability I remembered well. She said she'd lost the house. Gambling debts. Gone. Her carefully crafted image of control and perfection had finally crumbled. I listened in silence, waiting for the reason she had called. Then came the ask. She wanted to move in with me. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the past, just the assumption that because we were once under the same roof, I would now save her from her self-destruction. I declined immediately. It wasn't an emotional decision. It was survival. She didn't take it well. She called me selfish, ungrateful. She reminded me that she had let me stay after my father died, as though that had been an act of kindness and not a transactional arrangement. When I mentioned the rent I had been forced to pay, she acted like it was irrelevant. Her voice, once syrupy and patronizing, turned sharp with resentment. In a moment of bitter irony, I told her she could move in, but only if she paid me $200 a month in rent and followed my house rules to the letter. The line went silent. She hung up. I assumed that was the end of it, but I should have known better. A few days later, I opened my door to find her standing there with a suitcase, as though everything was already settled. I blocked the entrance and told her she wasn't welcome. She accused me of abandoning her, said I was cruel. But I stood firm. She was not my responsibility. Her next move was showing up outside my workplace, waiting in the parking lot. One day she was pleading, the next she was shouting. The voicemails started pouring in, first emotional, then manipulative. She painted herself as the victim, as someone wronged by the only family she had left. When she returned to my apartment, this time banging on the door and screaming loud enough for neighbors to get involved, I realized I needed legal protection. I compiled the messages, documented her visits, and filed for a restraining order. It was tedious, exhausting, and emotionally draining, but necessary. I remember sitting in the courthouse, numb, reliving each encounter, watching the clerk raise an eyebrow at the length of my evidence folder. The day the papers were served, she showed up one last time, her face twisted in anger as she accused me of betrayal. But when the police arrived, she fled. That was the last I saw of her. I thought I might feel guilt. I didn't. I felt free. For too long, I'd lived with the lie that I owed her something because she had been part of my past. But time taught me something important. Family is defined not by blood, but by care and respect. She had given me neither, and I had spent far too long carrying the weight of a relationship that had never been built on love to begin with. Maybe she's somewhere now, planning her next move, waiting for the next person to manipulate. Or maybe she's finally realizing that her actions have consequences. Either way, I am no longer the frightened teenager scraping coins together to survive. I am no longer someone who can be guilt-tripped into compliance. I've built a life that matters to me. It's not extravagant, but it's peaceful and honest. It reflects my choices, my work, and my resilience. I've reconnected with old friends, traveled solo for the first time, and learned how to enjoy my own company. I won't allow her or anyone else to dismantle it. To anyone out there struggling with toxic family dynamics, hear this. You don't owe anyone anything simply because of shared history. You deserve peace. You deserve space to grow. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, this journey isn't over yet.